Popestar is the brand new release from the band Ghost, and this is a 5-track EP. Papa and the Nameless Ghouls return to give us one brand new original track in the form of Square Hammer, which we talked about earlier this week, and 4 covers, which showcase the diversity of this band. And if you didn't know that already from the If You Have Ghost EP that was dropped a couple of years ago, you're certainly going to get a bit more of an idea here, considering a lot of these covers feel draped in the 1980s, even though that's not completely and totally true. In fact, there's one track that is as recent as the late 2000s, 2007-ish, I believe. Either way, we need to talk about this just very briefly. Now, we spoke about how Square Hammer presented this sort of middling format for Ghost. It was a song that definitely has some strength behind it. It's a catchy track, and it showcases that their songwriting hasn't really depleted itself really at all. However, it feels very much like a B-side from an album such as Meliora, which had so much strength really within its material during the initial couple of listens. And really, if you were go back to it more than a year later now, it still really represents that strength very nicely, and it still really holds up that test of time. However, Square Hammer, being that original, kind of gives us a little bit of a glimpse, perhaps, that this is a songwriting direction that could carry over into 2017 whenever they begin writing for their next record. Either that, or it could signal the end of this songwriting cycle, and we could have something completely different. That's how diverse this band sort of is. They're able to build with every passing album. So whenever we get into the covers, we have Nocturnal Me, which is an Echo and the Bunnymen cover. The song was released in 1984. I Believe, which is a Simian Mobile Disco cover. That's the most recent from the 2000s. We have Missionary Man, very popular song from the Eurythmics, which was from the 1980s. And then Bible, which is, this one's kind of interesting. It's an Imperit cover. And I probably just destroyed that, considering it is a band from overseas that was active during the 1980s as well. Bible being the name of that song, and it's also the longest cut on the album at 6.5 minutes. So, just some brief little reflections on each of these songs. I like that Nocturnal Me, the Ghost was able to represent the original kind of nicely in a way, but also paint their style all over it. It's got this sort of offbeat, very dissonant approach to it. It's not one that ever feels like you're completely comfortable. There's a bit of a melancholy drone to it, but also a little bit of a sinister feel, and that sinister feel is not so much that of evil or of presence, but it's instead one where you just feel throughout the entire experience that something is just off. And that's a good thing for this song whenever you consider the source material. It has that sort of cerebral approach to it that gives it a lot of charm, and it's one that also echoes some minimalism at times, which also works to its benefit. I Believe, however, it's what's funny about this is that Echo and the Bunnymen are, post-punk, but then the Simian Mobile Disco, they are electronica. So how is Ghost going to handle an electronica song? I Believe is proof that they can do that quite nicely, considering they can use their swirling keyboards. This is the closest I think we're going to ever hear to Ghosts being played in a club, potentially. And the funny thing is that they showcased with I Believe that they can be incredibly intimate with their sound, while also really, they could be played in clubs. They could produce this style of music and do so very well and make it very interesting, considering the way the instrumentalization is presented, the way in which the style of music sort of clashes a little bit, actually causes a little bit of handshaking that causes this track to have sort of a Halloween-esque approach to it, almost as though it's being sung for some sort of compilation. It's tremendous. I actually really like this track. It was really the highlight of this EP for me, because I was pleasantly surprised after researching who the Simian Mobile Disco was, to hear how well that Ghost was able to do this. I initially did not have high hopes. Missionary Man is relatively straightforward, and this essentially is a cover that it just bears in mind the idea of Ghost playing a Eurythmics song. The Eurythmics are able to give things a lot of depth and density based around some of their complex patterns that they were able to simplify in order to make some really delicate but also very energetic music, and Lennox, etc. But Ghost with this song, I just feel like they gave it the Ghost twist, and that's all the more that they did. They didn't really individualize it all that much. They wanted to actually stay a little bit more sacred to the source material. That's at least how I feel with it. Still a fairly decent cover. And then whenever we get into Bible is the track that probably nobody has heard of, and this is an interesting cut, considering whenever you take the lyricism into account, you would hardly believe that Ghost would be singing this track, but it makes a lot of sense, considering this track is handled with a lot of that sort of Freddie Mercury, that Queen instinct, and I have a feeling that the original sort of has some similar properties, but have never heard it, so there you have that. But I love the fact that this also feels very much like a band who's got a pontiff, which is exactly what Ghost is meant to represent, that is really preaching the doctrine of how the world that we know has come into effect. And he doesn't do it from the perspective of the Bible itself, which is perhaps what the song lyrics are meant to represent, the original couple of the first 7 days from Genesis, should I say. This is more so reflected in a way where Ghost is telling the world of the creation of this earth that Papa has done for us, or that those that came before Papa have done for us. It's amazing how just the way in which the tenses sort of shift, the way in which the overall presentation is delivered, just sort of the moxie that is behind this delivery and this performance gives you more of an inkling that it's being delivered as, a pontiff or as a deity, as opposed to being just recited by another bland, glad-handing, showcasing, deacon or priest or holy man. It's instead one that really echoes and registers with all of the power of, one of those very high energy, high belief, Christians from the South, perhaps, either that, or one that is believing that this legend is true and that their ancestors are actually responsible for it. I love the way in which this song echoes. I love the way in which it flows. And it is one that at 6 minutes and 34 seconds is the one that opens up the most. It opens up the most for the listener, and I like that. Overall, fairly decent EP. I really like these choices of covers. They might seem weird to some, considering you think Ghost is a metal band and you think they're going to cover, Metallica or Cannibal Corpse or, oh wow, have you heard the Ghost cover of Infant Annihilator? This is not a band that's going to do that. They're going to take things a different direction, and what's cool about that is that they're able to make each cover interesting. But I want to know what you guys think about Popestar. Let me know in the comments below. My name is coverkillernation. I'll talk to you later.